Hello, BookTube. We're continuing with my 2023 library tour. We're going to keep plowing ahead here. We're going to plow on to this next shelf, which is crammed full of books, so we'll go at a dispatch. And the first one doesn't belong here. The first one is one of those decorative blank notebooks. It's just a decorative blank notebook. Doesn't belong here. There's a pile of these things that I'm obviously not going to use. I don't know why I have so many of them, but that's the only thing. That's the only non-book. Now let's go through these. How are we gonna do our ergonomics? Here, we'll put the chair right there. So we have the Penguin Classic mass market paperback New Testament. That is totally recalcitrant. It does not tell me who the translator is. Just does not say anything at all. This is the New Testament in English. No idea who the translator is. I'm not going to fight with an inanimate object. Then along the same lines, we have the Bible again. I showed you a copy when we started off this Penguin tour. And here's another one. This is kind of the workaday one. This is a little more beaten up. This has my my Believe bookmark. And it's the one I go to. It's just, I wasn't sure how long Penguin was going to make these things, so when I found an extra copy of one, I grabbed it. I won't grab any more, I promise. 2 Penguin Classic Bibles. It's fine by me. Then we have the Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition of War and Peace. This is the Briggs. Yeah, this is the Anthony Briggs translation with the deckled edges and the French flaps. Just a lovely thing. Not 100% sure how durable it is, but every War and Peace is a totally different world from every other translation of War and Peace, so I like to have all of them. I like to have as many of the ones in the major ones in English as I can. Then we have the Peviar and Volkonsky translation of Anna Karenina. This was the one that sold shed loads because Oprah Winfrey picked it for the Oprah Winfrey Book Club. And I have a couple of clippings in this one. This also has the decal edges and the French flaps. Just a lovely production. We saw, was it yesterday? I'm looking to see here. Yeah, yesterday we saw the Rosemary Edmonds Anna Karenina. If not yesterday, then the day before that. And I prefer that. But the Peviar and Volkonsky is still very interesting. Then we have a big Penguin trade paperback that is not a Penguin Classic. It should be, but it's not. But it's wonderful. It's a whole world on its own. It's the collected short stories of William Trevor. It's a big, fat, iconic orange trade paperback. I can't really get enough of William Trevor. This volume in particular is just... There's a small shelf, probably 10 or 15 collected short story volumes in the American world that are must-have. Lots of people have collected short story volumes, but there's only a handful that are must-haves, that are just an entire universe, an entire vocabulary, and this is one of them. I absolutely love this. Then we have another Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition. This is a delightful thing. I do go back to this. A lot of Penguin Classic Editions I don't go back to as often as I should, but this I do. This is the complete novels of Jane Austen with the deckled edges and the French flaps. Just a big floppy thing that has all of the novels. Big fat thing. I think, just off the top of my head, I think I have 2 copies of that volume. Same for the same reason that I would grab a second copy of the Penguin Classic Bible, or for instance, if I were to run across at the Brattle for $5, a second copy of the Penguin Classic Tale of Genji, I would get that, just so you know, because I wouldn't want something horrible to happen. I don't need more than 1, or maybe 2, maybe 1 to keep in good shape and 1 to beat up. But the old Penguin Classic wall, that this part of my library tour is reminding you, a lot of you, of the Penguin Classic wall tour that we did. On that wall, there were 4 and 5 copies sometimes of things. No reason for that at all. Then we have the Elder Edda, a motherlode of Norse mythology, in a wonderful volume. Really good editorial stuff in that volume. We have the Penguin Classic Book of Magic, from Antiquity to the Enlightenment. All sorts of seminal supernatural writings and clarifications. I think there are even some spells in there. Let's see here. I think these ergonomics are just about ready to turn on me. I don't want that. I don't want any avalanches. We only have to. I only have to behave itself for a few minutes, and I'll go. Once we're done, I'll put it back in order. We have Appian, the Civil Wars, Roman history. The Roman historian who's not really in the front ranks, but is really good, really enjoyable. We have the Elder Edda in these. When the movie studio was putting out Peter Jackson's The Hobbit, Penguin repackaged a bunch of their Old English and Nordic classics, anything that might have been Tolkien, an influence on Tolkien or a Tolkien-esque flavor to them. They repackaged a lot of those with new cover art. I have them all at one point or another. I think I still have them all. I think we've seen one already. But this is the Elder Edda. And you see they even have the sticker on there to remind you that this is in conjunction with the Hobbit. Okay, then we have, this is, I think, a triple. Is this the third example of this that we've seen so far? I don't quite remember. It's certainly a double. This is the Penguin Classic Ovid's Metamorphoses. This is the translation by David Rayburn. I really like it. And it's so lovely. It's such a pretty thing that I grabbed 2 copies. I grabbed a second copy even though I knew I already had one. Then we have the Penguin Book of Victorian Verse, Penguin Classic trade paperback. I love this thing. Go back to it all the time because this was edited by Daniel Carlin, and he did a really good job, really thoughtful job. Then we have Transwise books, just a few. We have Know the Past, Find the Future. I don't think this was ever for sale. This is a celebration of the New York Public Library at age 100. And it is going through the library and talking with people about things that are in the collection. So a very specific thing, a celebration of America's second greatest library that Penguin just happened to be part of. Lots of fun to have. Okay. Then we have the Penguin Classic of Cold Comfort Farm. I cannot, of course, praise this book highly enough. If you have not read this thing, you're missing an absolute side-splitting treat. Just an absolute delight. Then we have Charles Lamb. This is Selected Prose of Charles Lamb. Nice Penguin volume of him doing his literary criticism bit. Some Transwide stuff here that's not Penguin Classics. What have we got here? Clippings. One on Catullus and one on Japanese ghost stories of Lafcadio Hearn. And Japanese ghost stories of Lafcadio Hearn we just recently saw. Isn't that right? Yes, here it is. Here. Right, in it goes. In it goes. Great. So found a home for that. Haven't come across Catullus yet. But I'll leave this out because we're going to. And then I'll know exactly where to get it. Then we'll keep moving on here. We're going to finish this shelf if it kills me. So the next 3 we have seen, I put these on the Penguin Classic shelf right away. These are Penguin Classic Black Spine Marvel comics. Spider-Man, the Black Panther, and Captain America. Full color reprints of Marvel comics that came out in the Penguin Classic line. Could not be any happier about that. And there's a new blast. There's a new group, a new trio that's coming out. The X-Men, the Avengers, and one other thing that is slipping my mind at the moment. It might be the Fantastic Four. It might be just a blast of super teams. I know the Avengers is one of them, and I'm pretty sure the X-Men is too, but I don't remember if the third one is the Fantastic Four. But I'm glad the Penguin obviously had a great reception for these things. I did my part to make that reception really, really warm and enthusiastic. So I will be trying really hard to get on the list for the next batch of Penguin Classic Marvel comics. So much fun to do. I talked about these with you. I wrote about them. Okay, speaking of available. All right, this next one is the Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition of The Tale of Genji in the Royal Tyler translation. And this is not the only copy of this that I have, but you can see I found this at a thrift shop. This wasn't even the Brattle. I found it, I think it wasn't even the Brattle. I found it at a thrift shop. It had a rip right down the front. I just reinforced it. 99.9% of the book was in perfectly usable condition. So now I have a beater copy, and that's good, because I go back to Genji, not for a full-scale reread in quite some time, but bits and pieces that I love. Then we have gigantic Penguin. Look at the size of this thing. This is Clarissa. by Samuel Richardson. Gigantic Penguin classic. I have a couple of copies of this as well. Not with this particular cover, but the reason I have a couple of copies of it is not the same reason as I have a couple of copies of Tale of Genji or the collected Jane Austen. These Penguin Classic Deluxe editions are indestructible. They can take a beating over and over again for multiple readings. Whereas these ordinary ones, with just the ordinary binding there, they are a little bit more temperamental, so I always want a backup copy of the ones that are really big, where the size of the book is going to be working against its structural integrity. We have another huge thing. This is The Recognitions by William Gaddis. Overjoyed to see this as a Penguin Classic Black Spine edition. Just overjoyed. One of the great novels of the 20th century. Not particularly accessible, but people don't hold that against Gravity's Rainbow. They shouldn't hold it against The Recognitions. Then we have another chunker. Good Lord, lots of chunkers on this shelf. This is a new edition, or relatively new, it's 20 years old now, of Boswell's Life of Johnson. Unedited Boswell's Life of Johnson. I have 2 copies of this as well. This is the beater copy that I go back to, because sometimes this is the only thing that will work for a reading mood. Sometimes this is the only thing. I was working in a retail bookstore when Penguin came out with this. I was overjoyed. Before this, they'd had a slim selections from Boswell's Life of Johnson, and they left the unedited, the unabridged version to Oxford World Classics. And Oxford World Classics unabridged Boswell's Life of Johnson is great. But this is different editorial look, different notes, different introduction. And when it came to the bookstore, I was so overjoyed. Just so overjoyed. And I had a regular customer, this wonderful, wealthy old woman that came in. She had a driver that brought her to the store. She would come and browse. We got to know each other. She started to realize that, no offense to my coworkers, but that she should come to me to talk books, real books, to talk about what's genuinely distinctive about whatever might be catching her eye in the shop, and also things that might not have caught her eye that might interest her. And she came in one day and said, what's new? And I enthused about this thing for 15 minutes, saying how wonderful, how joyous it was that Penguin had created this thing, that they'd taken a chance on a thing this big in our day and age. And unbeknownst to me, she bought a copy for me. We parted. She said, I'm going to browse. Thank you very much, as usual. And I said, anytime. Let me know if you need help bringing anything down to the car. Let me know if you've missed anything. Just give me a call. And I thought nothing more about it. Went on to help other customers. And when I went up to the registers like an hour later, a copy of the book was on hold for me with a thank you note. It was very nice. Then we have the Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of The Sun Also Rises. I actually did a review of this thing. This is just recently. This came out just last year when this book came into the public domain. And I thought, well, on Open Letters review, nobody tells me what to review or not to review. Nobody says, no, I'm not interested, nothing like that. It's my own bailiwick, so I just wrote about it. And it was a lot of fun to do. If I remember, I'll leave a link. We have the Penguin Classic Deluxe edition here, translated by Tim Parks, of The Prince by Machiavelli. Really, really nice setup there. Just very simple and stark. We have the Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of Tom Holland's translation of The Histories of Herodotus, which I reviewed for Quarterly Conversation. I think it was the Quarterly Conversation. I gave it a nice long review, talked about it in great detail, did one of my favorite things to do with a new translation like this, which is to take the reader through a couple of translations alongside it and point out what it's doing, very specifically, sometimes line by line. Point out what the new translation is doing by showing the reader that. It's not every venue that will give you the space to do that. And the Quarterly Conversation, I believe it was the Quarterly Conversation, they gave me all the room I wanted. So I did that. I don't think I'm blurbed on this. I think that would be a cause for absolute blinding joy if I were blurbed on the Penguin Classic Herodotus. I think I'm on the Amazon page for this, but no, I'm not. But that's all right. I'm blurbed on plenty of stuff. So then we have the Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of the novels of Sherlock Holmes. Just a lovely, lovely thing. Just a whole Victorian landscape there. I have the novels of Sherlock Holmes in a whole bunch of different formats, but I go back to this. I go back to this one because it's so solid, it's so good. Then we have the Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition. This is the only non-behemoth on the shelf. Well, this and the Prince. And this is the Heart of Darkness with cover illustrations by Mike Mignola, the creator of Hellboy. Perfect match between illustrator and creepy book. Then we have the Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition of the Robert Fagles translation of the Aeneid, with a bunch of stuff that I have stuck into it. And then finally, to wrap this up, the Penguin Classic Deluxe editions of the Fagles translation of the Iliad and the Odyssey. And I have more than one copy of both of these as well. I grab these when I see them as well, even though I don't believe Penguin ever made books more durable than these two. Maybe they did that intentionally and a little cynically because they knew that these things were going to be living in schools, that students were going to be using these. But you get, Fagles' translation is quite good. The design here is beautiful. 10 times more beautiful than the black spine normal Penguin Classic of Robert Fagles, even though that made them a pile of money. And it has a great introduction, great notes, just everything. This is a really good Iliad to have, and a really good Odyssey, and a really good Aeneid. So I have them, all three of them together here. And there you go. That is the next shelf of the 2023 library tour in this weird light. Lots and lots of big books, and those Marvel editions. Those Marvel editions are a really good reminder to me that first thing on Monday I need to start beating the bushes and finding out, can I get on the list for the next 3? I'm pretty sure I'm on the list anyway, but I want to make doubly sure. I want all the black spine Penguin Classic Marvel comics that I can get my hands on. So I'll wrap this up for now. I'm not really sure where the doubles of all of these things will turn up. I would think they would have turned up by now. We have a double of the Bible, a double of Ovid's Metamorphoses, but there are doubles of lots of these things. Unless there aren't. Maybe I got rid of them. The whole point of the library tour is for me to get a good grip on what I have and don't have. So we'll find out together. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll be back. Thank you.